2 Samuel Chapter 3. Now there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, but David became continually stronger, and the house of Saul became continually weaker. And in Hebron sons were born to David. His firstborn was Amnon, of Ahinoam the Jezreelitess. And his second, Chileab, of Abigail the wife of Nabal the Carmelite, and the third, Absalom the son of Maachah, the daughter of Talmai the king of Geshur. And the fourth, Adonijah the son of Haggith, and the fifth, Shephatiah the son of Abital. And the sixth, Ithream, of Eglah David's wife. These were born to David in Hebron. And while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, Abner made himself strong in the house of Saul. Now Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah. And Ish-bosheth said to Abner, "Why did you go into my father's concubine?" Then Abner became very angry about the words of Ish-bosheth, and he said, "Am I a dog's head that belongs to Judah? Today I show kindness to the house of Saul your father, to his brothers, and to his friends, and have not delivered you into the hand of David, yet you charge me today with iniquity concerning this woman. May God do so to Abner, and even more, if I do not do for David as Jehovah has sworn to him. To transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul, and to set up the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan even to Beersheba." And he could not answer Abner another word, because he feared him. And Abner sent messengers to David where he was, saying, "To whom shall the land belong?" And saying, "Make your covenant with me, and then my hand will be with you, to turn all Israel to you." And David said, "Fine, I will make a covenant with you, but I require one thing of you, namely, you shall not see my face, unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come to see my face." Then David sent messengers to Ish-bosheth Saul's son, saying, "Deliver my wife Michal to me, whom I espoused for 100 Philistine foreskins." And Ish-bosheth sent men and had her taken from her husband, from Paltiel the son of Laish. And her husband went along with her to Bahurim, walking and weeping after her. But Abner said to him, "Go, return." And he returned. Now Abner had conferred with the elders of Israel, saying, "For some time now you have been seeking for David to be king over you. So do it now, for Jehovah has spoken of David, saying, By my servant David I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines and out of the hand of all their enemies." And Abner also spoke in the ears of Benjamin, and Abner went also to speak in the ears of David in Hebron all that seemed good to Israel and that seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner came to David to Hebron, and 20 men with him. And David held a feast for Abner and for the men who were with him. And Abner said to David, "I will rise up and go and gather all Israel to my lord the king, that they may make a covenant with you and that you may reign over all that your soul desires." And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. And there came the servants of David and Joab from an attack, and they brought great spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he had gone in peace. And when Joab and all the army that was with him came, they told Joab, saying, "Abner the son of Neh has come to the king, and he has sent him away, and he has gone in peace." Then Joab went to the king and said, "What have you done? Abner has just come to you. Why is it that you have sent him away and he has gone? You know Abner the son of Neh, that he came to deceive you, to discover your going out and your coming in, and to know everything that you do." And when Joab went out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, who brought him back from the well of Sirah, though David did not know about it. And when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him privately. And there he struck him in the stomach, so that he died for the bloodshed of Asahel his brother. Then afterward, when David heard of it, he said, I and my kingdom are innocent of the bloodshed of Abner the son of Neh before Jehovah forever. May it fall on the head of Joab and on all his father's house, and may there not fail from the house of Joab one who has an issue or who is a leper or who leans on a staff or who falls by the sword or who lacks bread. So Joab and Abishai his brother slew Abner because he had killed their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. And David said to Joab and to all the people who were with him, Tear your clothes, and gird yourselves with sackcloth, and mourn over Abner. And King David followed the bier. And they buried Abner in Hebron. And the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king lamented for Abner and said, Should Abner die as a fool dies? Your hands were not bound, nor were your feet put into fetters. As a man falls before wicked men, you fell. And all the people wept over him again. And all the people came to make David eat food while it was still day, but David swore, saying, God do so to me, and more also, if I taste bread or anything else before the sun goes down. And all the people took note of it, and it pleased them, as everything that the king did pleased all the people. And all the people and all Israel understood that day that it was not of the king to put Abner the son of Neh to death. And the king said to his servants, Do you not know that a prince and a great man has fallen this day in Israel? And today I am weak, even though anointed king, and these men, the sons of Zeruiah, are too difficult for me. May Jehovah reward the evildoer according to his evil. 2 Samuel Chapter 4. Now when Saul's son Ish-bosheth heard that Abner had died in Hebron, he lost courage, and all Israel was dismayed. And Saul's son had 2 men, the captains of bands. The name of the one was Baanah, and the name of the second Rechab, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, of the children of Benjamin, for Beeroth is also considered to belong to Benjamin. And the Beerothites fled to Gittaim and have been sojourners there until this day. Now Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son who had crippled feet. He was 5 years old when the news came of Saul and Jonathan out of Jezreel. And his nurse took him up and fled. And as she hurried to flee, he fell and was made lame. And his name was Mephibosheth. And the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, Rechab and Baanah, went, and around the time of the heat of the day they came into the house of Ish-bosheth, while he was taking his noonday rest. And they came into the midst of the house, as though they were taking wheat. And they stabbed him in the stomach. And Rechab and Baanah his brother escaped. Now they had come into the house as he lay on his bed in his bedchamber, and they struck him and killed him and beheaded him. And they took his head and travelled by the way of the Arabah all night. And they brought the head of Ish-bosheth to David in Hebron, and they said to the king, Here is the head of Ish-bosheth the son of Saul, your enemy who sought your life. And Jehovah has granted my lord the king to be avenged this day of Saul and of his seed. Then David answered Rechab and Baanah his brother, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, and said to them, As Jehovah lives, who has redeemed my soul out of all distress. When one told me, saying, Saul is now dead. Thinking he was a bearer of good news, I took hold of him and slew him in Ziklag. That was the reward I gave him for the news. How much more when wicked men slay a righteous person in his own house upon his bed? And now should I not demand his blood of your hand and take you away from the earth? Then David commanded his young men, and they slew them and cut off their hands and their feet and hanged them up over the pool in Hebron. But they took the head of Ish-bosheth and buried it in the sepulchre of Abner in Hebron. 2 Samuel Chapter 5. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron, and they spoke, saying, Here we are your bone and your flesh. Even previously, when Saul was king over us, it was you who led out and brought in Israel. And Jehovah said to you, You shall shepherd my people Israel, and you shall be ruler over Israel. And all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron. And King David made a covenant with them in Hebron before Jehovah, and they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, he reigned 40 years. In Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. And the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land. And they spoke to David, saying, You shall not come in here, even the blind and the lame will drive you back. Thinking, David cannot come in here. But David took the stronghold of Zion, which is now the city of David. And David said on that day, Whoever would strike the Jebusites, let him go up to the watercourse and strike the lame and the blind, who are hated by David's soul. Therefore they say, The blind and the lame shall not come into the house. So David dwelt in the stronghold and called it the city of David. And David built all around from the Millo and inward. And David became greater and greater, and Jehovah the God of hosts was with him. And Hiram the king of Tyre sent messengers to David, as well as cedar timbers and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house. And David perceived that Jehovah had established him as king over Israel and that he had exalted his kingdom for the sake of his people Israel. And David took more concubines and wives from Jerusalem after he came from Hebron, and more sons and daughters were born to David. And these are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem, Shammua and Shobab and Nathan and Solomon. And Ibhar and Elishua and Nepheg and Japhia. And Elishama and Eliada and Eliphalet. Now when the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines went up in search of David, and David heard of it and went down to the stronghold. And the Philistines came and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. Then David inquired of Jehovah, saying, Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand? And Jehovah said to David, Go up, for I will certainly deliver the Philistines into your hand. So David came to Baal-perazim, and David struck them there. And he said, Jehovah has broken forth upon my enemies before me like the breaking forth of a flood. Therefore he called the name of that place Baal-perazim. And the Philistines left their images there, and David and his men carried them away. And the Philistines came up again and spread out in the valley of Rephaim. And David inquired of Jehovah, and he said, You shall not go up, go around behind them and come upon them opposite the balsam trees. And when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the balsam trees, then you shall act decisively, for then Jehovah will have gone forth before you to strike the army of the Philistines. And David did as Jehovah had commanded him, and he struck down the Philistines from Gibeon until you come to Geshur.